My daughter uninvited her mom to the wedding, so I refused to walk her down the aisle. It's hard to believe how we ended up here, standing on opposite sides of a divide so wide. It feels impossible to cross. The daughter I once held in my arms, whose laughter used to fill our home with light, has chosen to go through one of the most important moments of her life without us. And it all started with a decision she made. A decision that led me to make one of my own. A decision that I'll question for the rest of my life. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Weddings are supposed to be a celebration, a gathering of loved ones as two people commit their lives to each other. When Emma announced her engagement, I had imagined what it would be like to walk her down the aisle, to give her away to the man she loved. I thought about that proud moment, the joy on her face, the feeling of family coming together. I never thought I'd be sitting on the outside, looking in at something I wasn't invited to be a part of. Emma was always a headstrong girl. Even as a child, she was fiercely independent, always pushing boundaries and testing limits. I admired that about her, though at times it made parenting a challenge. She was the kind of person who didn't just follow the path laid out for her. She carved her own way, and for the most part, I supported her in that. I believed in letting her make her own choices, even when they weren't the ones I would have made. But this time, her choices cut too deep. It started with tension between Emma and her mother. My wife, Laura, has always had a complicated relationship with Emma. They're two alike in some ways, both stubborn, both passionate. They would butt heads over the smallest things. And what started as a simple disagreement would escalate into a full-blown argument. Over time, I became the mediator, the one trying to calm both sides, to keep the peace in our household. But I couldn't have anticipated that this tension would boil over just weeks before Emma's wedding. I remember the day Emma told us that she didn't want her mother at the wedding. Laura was devastated. It wasn't just the shock of being uninvited to her own daughter's wedding. It was the implication that their relationship had become so fractured that Emma didn't even want her there on the most important day of her life. Laura tried to talk to her, to understand what had gone so wrong. But Emma was resolute. She said it was about boundaries, about protecting her happiness on her wedding day. And just like that, Laura was cut out. For me, it was unthinkable. No matter what differences they had, this was family. This was Emma's mother. How could she just erase her from this moment? I tried to reason with her, to make her see that she couldn't do this, that there were some things you just don't do to family. But Emma wouldn't listen. She had made up her mind. It was then that I made my choice. If my wife wasn't going to be part of the wedding, then neither was I. I told Emma that if she uninvited her mother, I wouldn't walk her down the aisle. I thought it would make her reconsider, that she'd realize how much she was hurting us, how much we wanted to be there for her. But Emma didn't blink. She didn't flinch or beg me to change my mind. Instead, she did what I never expected. She replaced us. I didn't find out until later that she had asked her future in-laws to take our place. Her fiancé's father would walk her down the aisle, and her future mother-in-law would stand by her side in the photos that should have been ours. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the fact that she had replaced us, it was how easily she did it. As if we were interchangeable. As if the roles we played in her life up until now didn't matter. I tried to tell myself that she was just lashing out, that she didn't really mean it. But as the days passed and the wedding drew closer, it became clear that this was her new reality. She wasn't going to back down, and neither was I. The day of the wedding arrived, and Laura and I sat at home, the house eerily quiet. There were no bustling preparations, no last-minute jitters, no family members arriving to share in the joy of the occasion. Instead, we were alone, left to sit with the weight of what had happened. The silence was suffocating, filled with all the things we hadn't said, all the moments we weren't a part of. I wondered what was happening at that very moment. Was she standing there in her wedding dress, looking as beautiful as I'd always imagined she would? Was she smiling, laughing with her friends, surrounded by people who didn't even know how fractured her family had become? I thought about her walking down the aisle on someone else's arm, the arm that should have been mine, and the thought crushed me. It was a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone, the feeling of being erased from your own child's life. I spent the day in a fog, replaying every moment that had led to this. Was it my fault? Should I have given in, swallowed my pride, and walked her down the aisle despite everything? But then I'd remember Laura, the pain in her eyes when Emma told her she wasn't welcome at the wedding, and I knew I couldn't have gone without her. We were a family, or at least we had been. If Emma couldn't see that, then maybe I hadn't done enough to show her what family really meant. Weeks turned into months, and the rift between us only grew wider. Emma didn't reach out after the wedding, and neither did I. I was too hurt, too angry to make the first move. I told myself that it was up to her, that she was the one who had made the decision to cut us out, and it was her responsibility to fix it. But deep down, I knew that it wasn't that simple. Families don't just fall apart over one decision. It's a buildup of moments, of misunderstandings, of unspoken resentments that slowly chip away at the foundation until there's nothing left to hold on to. Laura and I tried to move on, but there was always this unspoken void between us. We didn't talk about the wedding, didn't talk about Emma. It was as if by not mentioning it, we could pretend that it hadn't happened, that our daughter hadn't chosen to live her life without us. But the silence was heavy, and it grew heavier with each passing day. Eventually, I started to question everything. Had I done the right thing by standing my ground? Was it worth losing my daughter to prove a point? I thought about all the milestones we would miss: her first anniversary, the birth of her first child, holidays and family gatherings that would go on without us. I wondered if she thought about us at all, if she missed us the way we missed her. But no matter how much I questioned it, I couldn't bring myself to make the first move. Pride is a powerful thing, and in that moment, it was stronger than my desire to reconcile. I told myself that she was the one who needed to apologize, that she was the one who had torn our family apart. But in the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I wondered if I had played a bigger role in it than I wanted to admit. Time has a way of blurring the edges of pain, of softening the sharpness of anger. As the months turned into years, the initial hurt began to fade, but the distance remained. I watched from afar as Emma built a life without us, as she became a wife, a mother, and a woman I barely knew anymore. There were moments when I wanted to pick up the phone, to tell her that I missed her, that I was sorry for how things had turned out. But every time, I stopped myself, the words caught in my throat, stuck behind the wall of pride that had grown too thick to tear down. In the end, the silence between us became permanent. I don't know if Emma ever forgave me, or if she even thought about the choices we had made. I hope, in some small way, that she understood why I did what I did, even if she never agreed with it. I hope she knows that I loved her, even in the moments when I couldn't stand by her decisions. But the truth is, I'll never know. Our lives moved in different directions, and the gap between us became too wide to bridge. I lost my daughter on the day of her wedding, and I've spent every day since wondering if there was a way to get her back. Maybe there was. Maybe all it would have taken was one phone call, one moment of vulnerability, one decision to put family above pride. But I didn't make that call. I didn't reach out. And now, I'm left with nothing but the memories of a daughter who used to be mine, a family that used to be whole. They say weddings are a time for new beginnings. But for me, it marked the end of something I didn't even realize was slipping away. I've lost more than I ever thought possible. And the worst part is knowing that I could have changed it. If only I had the courage to let go of my anger. But it's too late now. The wedding is over. The moment has passed. And all I have left are the what-ifs and the regret that lingers in the empty spaces where my family used to be.